Welcome back, everyone, to Call Me CEO. This is Camille Walker, your host, and I just want to thank you personally for being here, investing your time, and sharing a moment of your day with us wherever you might be. Today is an amazing episode with Mary Clavieres, who is the creator of Brief Transitions. It is the first to market mesh underwear for women after childbirth and surgeries. She is an experienced Amazon seller and leverages her 14 plus years of manufacturing at a Fortune 100 pharmaceutical company to grow her own product-based business. Now, this is part one of a part two series where we then go talk about the Transitions Collective, which is a platform based to support entrepreneurs and women who are building businesses and families, and mind mapping. So stick around for these episodes because they are going to be extraordinary. I know you're going to love them. Let's dive into episode one. I can't wait. So you want to make an impact. You're thinking about starting a business, sharing your voice. How do women do it that handle motherhood, family, and still chase after those dreams? We'll listen each week as we dive into the stories of women who know. This is Call Me CEO. Welcome back, everyone, to Call Me CEO. This is Camille Walker, and today I have with us Mary Clavieres, who is going to talk about leaving the corporate world and designing her own product that was desperately needed in the world. And I cannot wait to share your story, Mary. You have so much information and knowledge. Like, we're just going to dig in. And for those who are listening right now, know that this is going to be a part one and a part two. So this part one, we're talking about Mary's journey to leaving corporate America, creating her own product and business. And then part two is going to be in mind work and how she is now coaching other women to build businesses and find success of their own. So Mary, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Camille. It's nice to be here.
Now, I want to hear a little bit about your family first. We are all moms here. So tell me about where you live, your kids, tell me everything.
Yeah. So I'm based in New Jersey, right outside of Manhattan, right across the Hudson River. And I have two girls, my older one just turned 7, which is still baffling to me. And I have a 4.5-year-old.
Oh, that's so fun. And you're married?
I'm married. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And Oh, go ahead.
My husband's from France, actually, and he moved here about 10 years ago. So we've been here since then.
So you lived in Belgium for a couple of years. Is that where you met, or did you not meet until after?
No, we met in Belgium. I was on a work assignment and he was on a work assignment there too, from France, actually. And we met there, and then he came to the US.
Ooh, so romantic. My husband lived in France for a couple of years and speaks French. I do not. Do you speak French?
I do, but with the girls, I speak English and my husband speaks French. We do one parent, one language.
Oh, that's so fascinating. That could be a whole other episode. That's really cool. Okay, so you're a city girl, obviously, through and through, and you have had a lot of experience in corporate America. So tell me about how you went from that life, what you learned there, and how you brought that into Brief Transitions.
Yeah, so I spent a lot of time. Well, my background in pharmaceuticals is really in manufacturing. So I spent about 15 years in pharmaceutical manufacturing. And towards the end of my career, it was really in process improvements and helping our manufacturing sites work better, either on the shop floor with the equipment or even transactions and how they work through, like in the quality department or paperwork and things like that. So I've always worked with trying to make things better, if you will. And it's always been related to manufacturing. So after I had my first daughter, I, had an emergency C-section and I got the mesh underwear from the hospital. So
the blessed mesh. Yes. Yes.
Yes. So I got those and my friend said, you're going to run out, take more or make sure they give you more. So the nurse was very generous. She gave me more from the hospital, but I still ran out. And my mom had to go looking for underwear for me. And I'm much more comfortable saying this, on air or in public. She couldn't find any. She couldn't find more mesh underwear. So she bought me oversized granny panties and I had to cut the elastic waistband because it was digging into my incision.
Yes.
And I was really just like, I mean, the main question that kept coming up was, why aren't these available for women? Why, like, I just had a baby. Why can't I have the supplies that I need? It didn't make any sense to me. So I think with my manufacturing background, I was just kind of like, you know what? These exist. They're in the hospital. So some form of them exist. Why aren't they available for moms? And I've been in manufacturing. I know about manufacturing. How hard can it be?
Hmm.
It's good to be naive.
At least you had some, I mean, really, it was the perfect storm that you were in that spot and thinking that way because you do have the knowledge you have. But I'm sure, like opening that can of worms, like you said, that naivete of what was really to come. Tell us about that process. What did that look like?
Yeah. So in the beginning, it was very slow. It wasn't like, oh, I have this great idea and I'm gonna make this business out of it. First, I was just really like, maybe I can find the product and bring it to market to help some other moms because there's other women that, I mean, either they can't get them from the hospital or the hospital only gives them one pair. Some hospitals are very stingy with the mesh underwear.
Hmm.
Um, and I was like, let me just see. And it's just something I can do. I was looking at it more as like something creative for me to do, right? It wasn't meant to be, I'm going to build this and leave my corporate job, even though that's what ended up happening.
Yeah.
Um, so in the beginning, it was really step by step. I said like, okay, well, I wonder where I can make them. So I started looking at manufacturers and I would look online and then, let that go for a couple months and then come back and do something else and then let it go. It was really like spread out in terms of the steps and how I did it.
Hmm.
And then once I really started like after I looked at samples from the manufacturers and really picked something and put the order in and decided the packaging and all of that, I was like, okay, this is real, and I like put it online and I was like, all right, this might actually be something. And that's when I started to kind of pick up with it and do it, you know, um, yeah, just more purposefully, I guess.
Yeah. I am blown away. Like you said, that, you know, since the beginning of time, women have been having babies and this product has not existed. I had my last baby about the same time you invented this. He is almost 5. And I just think, man, I wish I would have known about brief transitions. It wasn't available at the time, but what an incredible product that I cannot believe did not exist. Like it just blows my mind.
Yeah, me too. I was really like, really surprised, really surprised.
And even those for people who are listening, can you just describe the product, what it looks like, where people can buy it, just so as we're moving forward? I guarantee you there are people listening right now jotting the note down. Where do I buy this? Because it is such a needed item.
Yeah, so it's at brieftransitions.com. I'm also on Amazon if you search Brief Transitions. But brieftransitions.com is the easiest place to get it. So, really, the thing with these, magical mesh underwear is they're super stretchy. So, regardless if you have a C section or vaginal delivery, you're going to be swollen.
Yeah,
And these underwear are really giving. So, like, think, the opposite of compression. Like, so they'll go to wherever your body is at that moment. And really, right after you have a baby, you're really swollen, like you can't really walk, and all of that. And they're super stretchy and really comfortable. They go up and over the incision area, like they don't put pressure on your midsection. Even with vaginal births, you can have like tearing or other things. You might need extra
absolutely. Mhm.
pads and stuff. And so it kind of like holds all that together, but not tightly.
So, if someone like me were wanting to create a product like this, where do you even start? I know that you have manufacturing background, but what were some landmines or things you didn't expect, even having been in this world? What is the process that you go through if you have an idea?
Yeah. So if you have a product idea, I mean, one of the first things that you can check if it's already on the market and you can check to see, if there is something on the market, is there a better way to do it, for example? But if you already have your idea and you're like, yes, I'm giving this a try, first, really looking for manufacturers
Mhm.
or making your own prototype in some way that you can ask the manufacturers if they can make it for you. But now, with so much being online, it's it's easier in some ways to find manufacturers now. And there's different like networks you can use. Like if you're looking at overseas manufacturing, for example, you can look at something like Alibaba.com, and they have lots of products on there, and you can kind of get an idea of what they offer. You can sometimes find suppliers other ways, but I will say, depending on what you want to make, a lot of suppliers, they don't really pay attention to like really small really small accounts, or like people that,
Hmm.
oh, I have this idea, they're like, well, I manufacture for, so I'm a huge fan of Sarah Blakely and Spanx, like, and what she's built. So, I manufacture for Spanx. I don't have time for you, and
Yeah.
just giving an example. So finding the suppliers that are willing to work with, you know, new business owners or new ideas is probably one of the bigger steps and very important, but can feel challenging while you're trying to do it.
Did you start with manufacturing overseas, or did you, because of your background in what you were doing with manufacturing already, did you have relationships here in the US?
So I looked in both places. I first started only with the US. So I do have manufacturing background, but it's in pharmaceuticals, so it's very different from clothing. So there
Mhm.
was some stuff that I had to learn in terms of the different ways that clothing is made and like what that process is. And so the way the underwear are made, it's not really easily accessible in the US. Actually, the type of equipment, they don't really have that here anymore. But I did start looking in the US first, and then eventually went outside of the US. But really, I would say it depends on what you want to make, what your price point is going to be, like what your brand is about, all those things. And you might be able to make it in the US. Obviously, making it in the US is more expensive, but if you're going higher end, it's something, you know, that it might work out for you. Um, but otherwise you can also look overseas.
Okay. So you have this prototype, you're working with a manufacturer. How did you find the one that you settled on? Did you have to go through a few?
Yeah. I looked at, I mean, I reached out to at least 12 or 15 manufacturers at first. And I probably looked at samples with four of them, and then whittled it down from that, and then did an extra round of sampling with the one that I ended up with. So it's kind of
Interesting.
like cast a wide net and then
Yeah.
kind of move inward.
And I do think a big part of that relationship is communication and knowing that they'll be available and responding to you and really paying attention to the detail and the packaging as well as the quality of the item. Was that hard for you to establish as you were going through that process?
Um, I think the hardest part was like getting the door open to begin with as a new
Mm.
person, right? But after that, it was easier to work with them. I mean, if they're willing to talk to you in the beginning, I mean, that's already a great sign. And then you kind of see how the development goes and how the responsiveness is as you go along. Um, I get there's always, a chance for something maybe to happen, but that's really the first part. And yeah, how they interact with you and if they take you seriously from the beginning. There are, of course, though, manufacturers that it will seem like they're taking you seriously, but then they're really, you don't have the background and experience, and they're not necessarily teaching you right. So they could be maybe taking advantage a little bit. You kind of have to look out for that too.
That is really good advice. Did you, at what point, you said that you left your corporate job where you were making really good money. At what point did you transition from, oh, this is kind of a side thing I'm doing on the side as I'm creating and producing, to, no, this is really happening and this is a thing? When did that happen for you?
So it happened over time. I'd say gradually. Brief Transitions was picking up and having more sales. And my last job before I left corporate it was kind of like an internal, the best way to describe it is it was like an internal consulting job. So I was actually traveling almost every week for
Mm,
my job, either in the US or outside of the US. And it was really exhausting.
yeah.
And I had two young kids at home. So it was kind of a perfect storm of, wow, Brief Transitions can really be something on its own. And wow, my corporate job is draining me and I can't be away from home all the time. And I just don't want that lifestyle anymore. Like, I didn't love it to begin with. I had already lived overseas. I already traveled a lot. I was entering a different phase of my life, right? And motherhood makes you really question, values, purpose, like all meaning, all of that stuff.
Hmm.
Um, so it was kind of the perfect storm of those two things. And then I ended up leaving in April of 2018, which it was still a hard decision for me. I really fought it, but my husband was kind of like, why are you doing this to yourself? You're really stressed out, you're away from home all the time. And it was really not a good situation. So that's what really helped me to take the leap.
Oh, that's awesome. I really feel like when you have a good partner that sees that and can slow you down, especially for ambitious women like you and people listening, I think that it's such a gift to have a partner who will say, "Okay, let's take a beat. How much are you putting into this and why? And what is a must do and what is a can do? Where are you choosing this amount of stress? Could you take a step back?" And did you find that when you left that situation that you were able to become more productive and push your business in a whole new way?
Oh yeah, I mean, the the transformation I felt even just from like saying I was leaving and then to actually leaving was, I mean, it was incredible. Even just not having, because I was working at night and on the weekends for brief
Mm.
transitions, I had a
Mhm.
full blown corporate job that took up all my time during the day. So even just the fact of not having two laptops and two cell phones and
Ugh.
like the mental, like juggling of all of that, just having all of that disappear was huge.
If you're looking for a new way to reach your financial goals, consider a new way of budgeting with Cube Money. I don't know if you're like me, but the place where I lose track with spending is when I'm eating out, subscriptions I've lost track of, or last minute Amazon purchases. With Cube Money, you have a digital cash envelope system and a bank account all in one place that keeps your goals in check. How? The app actually allows me to check my balance each time I use my card. It makes it so much easier to say no to things when I think about my big goals front of mind, like our Europe trip that Paul and I are saving up for. Check it out for yourself so you can stick with your goals, living more and stressing less at www.cubemoney.com/Camille. That's Cube spelled Qube. Tell me more about that, transitioning into finding a clearer focus. How were you able to dive into that purpose and finding that for yourself?
I mean, I think just first really deciding and saying, okay, I'm going for this and making that decision, that was for me the huge turning point. After I did that, I was kind of like, okay, anything is possible. I can do something else. Like I could start a different company. I could, it didn't matter. I was like, this the scariest part for me. There's still obviously things that are scary sometimes, but the scariest part was done because like I
Mm.
had so much time and so many years invested in my corporate career. And let's be honest, like most people in the culture tells us, get a good job, stay there for your life kind of thing, even though we know that's changing now, but it's still really hard when that's ingrained in you for so long to actually make something different.
Did you have a coach or a mindset leader that gave you that vision, or is that something you came up with on your own?
Um, I had both. I had a business coach at the time. I fully believe in having coaches because a good coach will act like a mirror for you and really show you things back as to like what what you can do or have you, give you that support to be open to the possibilities. So I did have a business coach, but some of the work was also internal. Like I had to do it for myself. A coach can't do that for you. So I'd say it's a mix of the two.
Yeah, I like that. So you have this product, it's going well, you're to a point where it's really going places. How were you handling fulfillment this whole time?
Oh, I was doing it myself and
Yikes.
storing product out of my parents live in New Jersey. They live like about an hour away from me. And I had a relative that lived closer and I eventually, stored product in their garage, my aunt's garage. And I was doing it very manually. And
Mhm.
it's obvious for that's one of the hardest parts, I think, for product businesses is that those early stages where you have to do all that yourself because you
Yeah.
can't really, there's not really the space or the financial freedom to have a fulfillment center do it for you.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, it was very, very manual in the beginning. And I was rolling underwear, and my in laws would come and visit and they would be rolling underwear, and friends would come over and they would be rolling underwear. Like, I was like, let's, please help me. Yeah.
When did you make the transition of hiring and like expanding your team? How much time did that take and what steps did you take for that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I want to say it was about 2 years probably before I went to a fulfillment center. Um so and I kind of did it in stages. So in the very beginning I was doing it, then I had my relatives helping me. They were retired, so they just liked to have something to do. Um and then I said, "Okay, like this is not, it's just not sustainable anymore. It comes to a point where it's not worth your time. You have to look at the time you're giving to it and where else you could be spending your time." So then I started interviewing fulfillment centers. And really, you have to start, you can't just go with the first one you see or talk to. You have to look at pricing, look where they're located, see what their services are, and if they feel like they're a good partner for you, because you really want it to be a partnership because they're holding your product for you. That's a
Mhm.
pretty big, it's a pretty big deal. So you want it to be a strong relationship, and you want them to also have, you want them to have enough experience, but also be willing to support a small but growing business.
Yeah, that's really good advice to interview them and find one that fits well with you and you have direct access to and you can trust. Do you feel like, I mean, listening to you and I know that it's doing amazing things and it's big, but I'm like, girl, I didn't know about this before I met you. It needs to be bigger. Like
I
I want to
know.
use this platform to like shout it from the rooftops, but like do you ultimately have a goal to have this on the shelves like at grocery stores or even in the hospitals? Like people need to know about this. So tell me more about that. What are we
I
doing?
know. Yeah. I appreciate that. Thanks. Yeah. It's something that I'm working on.
Okay.
Um, it's easier. I mean, it's easier in a lot of ways to be online,
Sure.
especially on my own site and Amazon, because really,
Amazon's great. Yeah.
I mean, before COVID, it was maybe a different story, but especially since COVID, everyone's shopping online,
Hmm.
and you know, and the end customer, like the mom, they can really get it sooner. But I am looking at other retail outlets. Maybe one day it could be on the shelves at like a Target or you know Walmart or somewhere like that retail. But I haven't, or Buy Baby, but I haven't really explored that enough yet. I need to though.
I think you do. I mean,
Yeah.
being on Amazon alone, that's huge because everyone uses Amazon. However, I think that this is a product that people need access to everywhere. Like
Yeah.
it just makes so much sense to me. So I think that's really fascinating. And so now that you are where you are, what advice would you give to someone listening now, thinking about something or a product that they would maybe want to create? What are some things that you've learned along the way, even with balancing your time? I mean, my goodness, you balance your time really well if you've been able to do the corporate and build a product and do the fulfillment and be a mom. Like, teach us your ways. What are some of those golden nuggets?
So I mean, I think the most important thing when you have a new idea or something you're really passionate about and you believe in is to really have the right support system around you. I cannot stress it enough, because the mental game in being a business owner is something like you're always learning and adapting and having to grow and challenge yourself and how you grow. And if you don't have the right support around you, it's very easy to just say, oh, this is a silly idea, or oh, it's not worth it, or oh, who am I to do this? There's so many ways you could talk yourself out of everything, basically. And I think having other people around you that get it or that are really, you know, solid cheerleaders for you is really, really important, because you will not, it will just be a lot harder. It'll be a lot harder if you don't have that. And then in terms of like I also find it's really easy to get overwhelmed. Like we're looking at lots of things, we're juggling, we have huge to-do lists. And when I get really overwhelmed, I just say, okay, what is the one next thing that I need to do right now? What
Mm.
is that? And let me just focus on that. And then again, what's the one next thing? I do that. What's the one next thing? And when you really feel the overwhelm of like everything and the big picture and all of the stuff, just bring it into one thing. I think it makes a big difference even for like your mental outlook of how you kind of tackle the day.
Yeah, I really like that. The one next thing. Do you have a routine or special time for yourself that you take each day to get your mindset right? Do you have like a morning ritual, or how do you establish time for yourself so that you feel ready to attack the day?
Yeah, I have both a morning and an evening routine, which I'm I'm always like open to changing it a little bit, but I'm adamant freedom is very important to me. Having like having the space to do what I want to do, and I think that's really important for moms because a lot of the time we're like, I don't have time, I have to do this and this and this, but I can't express how critical it is to have the time for yourself before you
Mm.
start doing the things for everybody else. Um, so for me in the morning and evening, I have a gratitude journal. I use the 5-minute journal. It's a daily gratitude practice, literally takes 5 minutes to fill out. In the morning, you put, what you're grateful for and what would make the day great and some affirmations. And at the end of the day, you write, what was great about the day and what could you have done better. I've been doing that for a while and it really makes a huge difference. I also I have a recording from one of my coaches. That's positive affirmations. And I listen to those every morning when I get up. Like, even sometimes, like, I don't want to get out of bed. So I just listen in bed. And other
Mhm.
times, I even listen, like, as I'm brushing my teeth or, just because I'm like, I want to hear, you need to be reminded of those things. Most of
Yeah.
us do not speak nicely to ourselves with our inner voice. And listening to those first thing when I wake up, I find very helpful. And in the evenings, it depends on what I feel like doing, but I also either do some type of recap of the day, like journaling. I'm a huge fan of journaling, which I have not always been. This is very recent for me in this past year. Um, Journaling or meditating, like taking some quiet time before bed to really do some reflecting is also really, really helpful.
I like all of those ideas. This review comes from Andy221144. As someone who can't sit still at home, I am so excited to hear other ladies who are balancing home and passions. Camille is relatable and has found some wonderful women to tell positive stories and motivate us to be who we want to be. I am already loving this podcast. Thanks. Well, thank you, Andy. I can't tell you how much it means to me that this is motivating and that you're loving these episodes. Please continue to tune in and know that each review, just like this, makes my entire week. Thank you so much. And have you felt like, you mentioned the past year, do you feel like the pandemic has really helped you reframe your own thinking and your mindset? Is that because of that transition happened in this past year?
Um, I started before, but I'd say the pandemic definitely accelerated certain parts of it, of like having my own like inner growth and time to reflect, right? We all slowed down a lot, especially at the beginning of the pandemic. And I'm in an area where a lot of things are still kind of closed down just because the population is we're so densely populated here. Um, so there's a lot of time like on your own or like with your family where it's, you're not going and seeing a lot of people and doing a lot of things. I used to have a very busy schedule, and that slowing down definitely did help me to reflect a lot more. And I do think it was a catalyst in some ways for like, yeah, throughout the year.
Yeah. I feel like it's been really transitional and reflective for all of us. It really gave us a magnifying glass of what are your priorities? Do you really put your time where you say your heart is?
Mm-hmm.
Because this is the true test of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you
Definitely.
feel like your kids have learned? I mean, of course, they've learned from watching you, but are there specific things that you've seen or had them ask you about through this journey that you've been able to watch their growth?
Yeah. So well, back when I was doing the underwear myself, at home, my older daughter would ask me like, "Oh, can I help you with the underwear?" Like they wanted to help. And,
Hmm.
it usually means just redoing it after because it's not quite done correctly when they help. But I had them, for example, like I would make the bags and the labels and everything, and they would count them for me. I said, "Oh, can you count for me rows of 10?" So something that would keep them occupied, but not
Hmm.
necessarily
Mess it up.
yeah, mess it up. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. so and they so they did take an interest in that. So like when they asked questions, I would try to answer the questions. My older one asked about how do you sell or like where do these go and that kind of thing. And I would share with her. So it's been really amazing to watch that. And I also, with my community for mom business owners, I would, before the pandemic, I was doing monthly in person meetups.
Mm.
And when I had my corporate job, I was doing them in the evening. So my daughter would always see me like, leaving for those meetings, and she would ask me after, "How was your mom entrepreneurs group?" It
Cute.
was so cute. And I would show her photos from the events just because she was interested. Like, where am I going? What am I doing? And she wanted to know. So I said, "Yeah, I'll share."
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
really cool. And so are you working from home now? Is
Yeah.
that, yeah, you are.
Mhm.
How do you time block and really get the time in that you need to get your stuff done?
Yeah. So it depends. I think there's a big balance here that it's something that I've learned and have kind of been practicing, especially during the pandemic. Um, I'm trying not to be too rigid with my
Hmm.
time because I was, before the pandemic and I had like straight blocks of working time. The girls were in school, like I knew what I was doing. So I would schedule out my time. I would pick my priorities for the week, identify my blocks of time. I would literally make appointments for myself in my calendar so I knew what I was doing when, which works very well when you know what time you have, right? But with the pandemic and like this week, actually, one of my daughters is home. She wasn't feeling well. It's not COVID though, so that's good. Um, so that kind of like threw things for a loop. Like, okay, how are we changing now? So it's really like a balance of like having the structure, but also being able to work from the flow and like the discipline of like knowing when you need each one, right?
Yeah.
So time blocking for me, I mean, for right now with things so up in the air, I usually look on Friday afternoon or Sunday evening. I'll look at my schedule for the week and I'll see what calls I have, and then I'll see like, okay, what are the top 3 items 1 to 3 items depending how big it is that I want to get done for the week. Um and work on those first, instead of all the little. It's really easy to get caught up in all the little to-do list things that really don't do much for you. I mean, they feel important, but they don't do much for you. So, yeah, trying to leave those for later.
Yeah. I think what you're referring to, and the way I like to think of it, is what is an action that you're doing that is moving the needle?
Yep,
Something that gives you that optimal return for your time, because really that's
yep,
what we're all trying to figure out, right? So I
exactly.
like that. I think there's a magic in three, identifying three things, because
Yeah,
it's enough that it's not overwhelming, but it feels like more than one. So it's
yeah,
like, okay, we can do three.
yeah,
So that really is a good transition point for us to give a teaser for the next episode, since we're going to be recording another episode that will be after this one. And that's going to be about getting into your three thinking preferences using the Herman brain dominance instrument, which I just had to read my notes so I know exactly what it is, because Mary's going to tell us all about it. But tell us a little bit about that, a teaser about what that is and your coaching for women, and then we can wrap this one up and launch into the next.
sure. Yeah, so I'm certified in using the Herman Brain Dominance instrument, which is an assessment to measure your thinking preferences. So different from a personality test. It's not a personality test, but it's really how does your brain prefer to think? There's a high level, there's 4 quadrants. And where do you usually go? How does your brain operate when you think as you think? And then how do your thinking preferences change under stress? So
Mm,
that's a big piece for a lot of people is like, okay, we have our steady state, but now especially with the pandemic, like how do we operate under stress, and people's thinking preferences sometimes change a lot when they're under stress. So how can you understand that and then work from a centered place? Like what can bring you back to neutral, to not being under stress, or just how can you operate better using that knowledge? So that's what I work on both with business owners and in the corporate world. Still, I do some workshops and consulting there too. But it's really about understanding yourself better. And this is, a validated system backed by science and everything. And it's a really powerful tool. It changed my life. So that's why I got certified and wanted to help other people with it.
Well, I'm fascinated by it and I can't wait to learn more, because as soon as we started talking, I was like, okay, wait. This is like 2 episodes, because what you've done in the journey to get where you are and to launch a product and everything that you've done is so fascinating and encouraging. And now this, where you are now a coach and helping people understand how they think and how to be more productive in their time, that in and of itself is so powerful and empowering. And whether or not you're running a business or not, every woman, every mother is running a business of their home. So I think everyone will find this episode incredibly fascinating, but we're going to wrap this up quick and say, where is the best place to reach out to you and to connect with you online for those that are listening to this episode?
But yeah, so it's for the postpartum mesh underwear, you can go to brieftransitions.com. And for anything related to me and what I do, you can go to maryclaviere.com. So
Perfect.
It's just my full name.
And are you on Instagram as well? Or
Yeah, Instagram, I'm at the Transitions Collective, and I'm at Brief Transitions for the underwear.
Okay, perfect. And we will put that all in the show notes below. I believe we have a discount code for you to use as well. So if you're interested in that, make sure to search for that. I think it will be Camille for the code for that. And Mary, thank you so much for recording this episode with me. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode of Call Me CEO. If you found it helpful or inspiring, I would love it if you shared it with a friend. And also, I would love it if you came and joined me on Instagram at Call Me CEO Podcast, where you can join other like-minded mamas like you who are looking to step up in their lives and make it even better. Thank you so much, and I will see you next week.